In the gospel and the transfiguration, which we just heard, there's two very important points, words, that are used that you kind of put on your Bible thinking cap for. So again, you've heard me say, when the mountain is talked about in the Bible, when you hear a mountain, that's a trigger. That means that from earth, human beings are about to go to an elevated place that is close to heaven, and heaven and earth are going to touch. Moses did this, and so when Jesus is taking Peter, James, and John up the hill, they're already alert to something like heaven and earth are about to touch. There's something that's about to happen here where God is going to talk to man. And then the second word, so we have mountain, and the other word is sleep. Now, I love sleep just as much as the next guy, but in the Bible, sleep is not a positive thing. It's actually symbolic for kind of the days that we have when we're not fully attentive to what's going on in front of us. So think, for example, in the garden. Jesus is suffering. He said, stay awake and pray. What do? Yeah, exactly. So sleep in the Bible is actually not a good thing, symbolically speaking. And so here you are, we're on this mountain, this godly experience, and there's this sleep that comes over them. And I just really relate to that in my own personal experience of like, man, a lot of times in my life, I live like I'm in this stupor, this sleep. There's like this veil that's over my eyes. There's real stuff going on all around me, but I'm not totally aware of what's going on. Most of our life is spent behind this veil. But there are moments when we get glimpses on the other side. God breaks into our life and we start to see, oh my gosh, there's more than this. There's more than just what I'm seeing. Here are a couple examples. You've ever seen a beautiful sunset or you've been to the Boundary Waters? You've seen the beauty and it's like, it takes your breath away. You're kind of like, there's something more than this. Someone orchestrated this. Whoever the artist was that put this together is pretty great. Or if you've ever had a loved one near death, man, the veil is thin. When you're in that moment with them, and they're going in and out of consciousness, and they're even, seeing loved ones who have already passed away, meaning they're kind of transitioning from this life to the next, the veil's thin. You're no longer in that stupor sleep of like, whatever, I'm living my life, whatever, man. No, you are awake. You are woken up. The veil is thin. Or even this couple recently, they've known each other for 10 years, and they just recently got engaged, so they're in marriage prep with me. And I asked him, like, how did you get engaged? And he's like, well, we've known each other for 10 years. We were on a hike. It was just the two of us. And then I was shaking in my boots, the guy said, to get down on my knee and ask her to marry me. And I'm like, why were you nervous? I'm like, you've known her for 10 years. And you already know she's going to say yes. Well, why? The veil's getting really thin there. The love of a married couple, the love that they're entering, there's something godly about it. It's beyond us. Of course we're going to tremble. Or if you've ever been to Guatemala, Father Tony will say this. If you've been in the room where Blessed Stanley Rother was martyred, he gave his life for God, the veil is thin in that room. When you go to the tile and celebrate Mass in the place where he said, I give my life for this, unbelievably powerful. And so there are moments in our life where it kind of breaks through. But if you're like me, 95% of the time, I'm on autopilot. And so what I want to point out today is that we are on a journey. Sounds cliche, but no, we are on a journey. And in this journey, we kind of need wake-up calls. We need these transfiguration moments, alarm clocks, if you will, that wake us up and are like, hey, there's more than this. There's more than what's going on here. You're on a mountain. So the 4 parts of a journey. Number 1, there's the origin. It's where you begin. It's where you come from. If you don't have an origin, if you don't have point A, you're lost. If you don't know where you're coming from, how do you even get directions? You go into the gas station or ask Siri. If she doesn't know where you are, good luck. You need the origin, point A. You also need point B, the destination. You need to know where you're going. I need to know what I'm typing in my GPS If you don't have a destination, man, you're just wandering, you know? There's no place you're trying to get to. You're just kind of aimlessly whatever-ing around. You need A and B, and then you need a path to get there. We need to know, how do you get from there to there? Even if you know where you're starting and where you're going, if you don't know the path, that's like the definition of being frustrated. Oh, how do I even do this, you know? And then finally, even if you have point A, point B, and the path to get from one to the other, you need a purpose. If you don't have a reason to do that, if you don't have a reason to run the marathon, to get to the finish line, we'll quit. I'll quit. And so these things we need to be reminded of. So where did we come from? What is our origin? A lot of times I feel as if, if you ask me, Father Ryan, where did you come from? I could give you this beautiful theological answer. Well, the Creator God one day in great love sought to... I could give you a beautiful answer. But then if you look at the practicals of my life or any of our lives, sometimes it's like, blah. Where'd you come from? I don't care, I'm here. Whatever. That's kind of the answer. I guess I'm here now, whatever. And this is what St. Paul is talking about in the second reading when he says, there are those that conduct themselves as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their end is destruction, their God is their stomach, their glory is their shame, and their minds are occupied with earthly things. What is he saying there? He is saying, you know what? They say they believe in God. They could give you a beautiful theological answer, but you look at the way that they live their life, I live my life, what's the difference between them and an atheist, Like, they're living as a practical atheist. Does the way you came from, the purpose God gave you, impact the way that you live? Your origin, my origin, needs to impact our day-to-day life. Here's the truth. You are not a practical atheist. God made you. God hardwired you. And He designed every part of you. It's not just like an accident that you're here. And whatever, I guess one of Him too. He knows every single hair on your head, or lack of hair on your head, if you will. And every tear that you've cried. Can you imagine? It says in the Psalms that God has every tear written in His book that you've cried. What does that mean? Could you imagine going through this book and being like 6 months, cried because was hungry. 6 months, cried because Father's homily was too long. Or you go to 3rd grade, all of a sudden you're looking, 20 tears were cried because fractions are hard. Every tear in your life is accounted for. Someone took that much interest in you. Clearly, He's invested in you. As my spiritual director always tells me, God has a vested interest in seeing you succeed. You succeed. And Pope Benedict says, you are unique and unrepeatable. You are irreplaceable. God has chosen you for something, to love in a certain way that nobody else can. Think about that. Man, could you imagine how that would impact the way that you live? Knowing where you come from and why you are here, every hair on your head, He intentionally hardwired you. And how many different combinations of your parents' DNA could have been used to make different people? Millions. But here you are. There is a reason you are here, living, breathing, walking. God chose you, He wanted you, He created you. Someone put a lot of care into making you. It's not just random. I could give you statistics all day, but I'm not a scientist. But someone was telling me once, in the eye, statistically speaking, if it was random, that your eyeball, all the atoms were in the right place, randomly, so that your eye could see, just for 1 second, it's next to 0. And now that there's all of these different eyeballs here, hopefully awake, yeah. And then they're all seeing, not just for 1 second, but on and on and on. Someone intentionally designed what we're doing. Your origin, you came from God for a purpose, and you are infinitely loved. And where are we going? Where are you and I going? If you're like me, again, sometimes my sight is way too narrow. I'm not actually looking at my final destination. I'm looking way too narrow-sighted. And so in high school, if you would have asked me, what's my final destination? What am I living for? What's getting me out of bed in the morning? What are my goals? I would have said, I want to be a coach, a teacher, wife, family, wealth would be nice while we're at it. Okay, that was my goal, somewhere in my mid-30s. That's what I was shooting for. But the truth is, we all have these experiences in life where we get what we're looking for, we kind of meet these goals, and we say to ourselves, that was it? I had this experience on Christmas as a kid. I'd have all these things that I'd ask for, and I'd wake up, and I'd unwrap my gifts, and I'd play my video games, and I'd hit my drum set, and then I'd get to about noon, and I'd be like, this is it. You know, toys are great, but this is it. You can ask football players. Benjamin Watson, a couple decades ago, won the Super Bowl, got done, and he said, this is it? You get a sweaty trophy, a couple after parties, a parade, and the next week I go back to work? That was my goal. Even looking as far as Justin Bieber, for those of you young people. This is like young people's Elvis, okay? Justin Bieber, he was literally the best musician for decades, in my opinion, but his ratings were really good. Top of the charts, very gifted. Everybody wanted him in movies. Everybody wanted him in this. He had all the money. Everybody wanted to be his friend. And he got to a point where he said, what's it all worth if I'm completely miserable inside? What is all of this worth? Those things, Justin Bieber, the Super Bowl, Christmas gifts, not bad things. But if that's our final destination, if that's what's in our GPS, is what we want to achieve at all costs, not a stop along the way, but your final destination, you're setting yourself up. I'm setting myself up for failure. Where are we going? Beyond the veil. This isn't it. I don't know if you've ever watched those near-death experiences. You don't have to believe them. It's not Catholic dogma. But I find it fascinating. These people who have been clinically dead for, some up to 30 minutes even, clinically dead, pronounced dead, they're resuscitated, they come back to life. And they've had atheist scientists interview them. So it's not like, me and Father Tony are like, okay, must have been Jesus, must have been Jesus. Atheist scientists, objective. They're not trying to see any sort of spiritual things into this. And they have noticed trends in these people of what happens after they die. They have said, when I passed away, I entered into a place like I have never experienced before. One of them said this is unbelievable. On earth, we just have these 5 weak senses. And I'm like, what does that mean? I can't even come up in my imagination with something other than seeing, hearing, tasting, whatever. But in heaven, it's like you're experiencing reality so much more real. A lot of them comment, they're like, it's almost like I look back at my life on earth and it was like I was dreaming while I was on earth. This is so much more real. It's like that was in black and white and this is in color in 3D. It's so much more real. And all of them, they ask, every single one of them in this study, they said, did you want to come back? And they say no. They're like, well, didn't you miss your family? Well, of course. But this new place was so unbelievably amazing that I didn't want to come back. I wanted them to come and join me there, actually. My brothers and sisters, that's B. You are made in love for a purpose, for that. You and I are made to go home. And in 100 years, except for maybe a couple of the infants, we're going to be joining them. We are going to walk that road. That is the final destination. That's where we're going. And this is what Chris Tomlin says in his song. This world is not what it was meant to be. Pain and suffering. But there's a better place waiting for me in heaven, where every tear will be wiped away, every sorrow and sin erased, every chain will be broken, every fear is gone. Blinded eyes will finally see, and the dead will rise on the shores of eternity. The trumpets will sound, the angels will sing, you are going home. Let's not put our sights too narrow. Let's not live for our mid-30s. or live for, whatever. Those are great things along the way, but our final destination is that kingdom, is home. And how do we get there? You've heard me say, from A to B, heaven is more of a person than it is a place. The reason why heaven is awesome is not because because of who's there. I'm sorry. The reason why heaven is heavenly is because of who is there. And so, for a long time in my life, the path that I would walk, or that I thought I had to walk, is I would look up to heaven and I would say to God, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Let me know. I'll do it. Which is actually a good prayer. But it needs to go deeper than that. What I realized is what I'm actually saying when I say, hey, let me know what I need to do and I'll do it. What I was actually telling God was, I'll come back when I'm perfect. I'll come back when I fixed myself. I'll come back when I've done it. No. What's beautiful and what's a place of recollection is life is not a speedboat that I'm driving. Life is a sailboat, and the wind drives it. Now, of course, if you've sailed before, you need to be in the right angle. You need to work with the wind. You need to be able to know how to drive the ship, but the wind is what powers it. Jesus is driving. The Holy Spirit, the wind. And so the moment that you and I say to God, all right, I'll take it from here, that's the moment that we've left the path. The path, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Through him, with him, and in him to go to heaven. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. So the moment that we say, all right, I'm going to step over here, you stay over there, I'm going to figure it out. We've left the path. We've left the path from point A to point B, from being infinitely loved at our origin to going to our destination, which is that beautiful kingdom. And then finally, why are you doing this? Why are we doing any of this? Why do you come every Sunday? Because this is where true happiness is found. This is where you actually can find fulfillment, where you can be completely understood, completely peaceful, joyful, satisfied. In the end, loved. You can invest in any other thing in your life, and me too, and it's not going to give you the absolute satisfaction that you want. This world points towards the next. Why are you doing this? For complete happiness. Blessed are you. Truly happy are you when you follow the way, the truth, and the life from A to B. And so my brothers and sisters, if you're feeling like you're in that kind of sleep, that disciples nodding off, here we are. Here's a little alarm clock. Let's enter in. Let's look beyond the veil. There's more than this. Jesus made you for a purpose, and there is a place he needs you to be. Let's enter into that, and let's ask his help today as we receive him in Holy Communion.